Start with acknowledging where you are. Ask yourself, where am I at in life right now? Not where I want to be, not where I thought I'd be, not where I am in comparison to anyone else, but where am I right now? Where am I actually? And just acknowledge and say, this is my current lap. That's what this is. It's just a lap. How many laps are in a Formula One race? Well, little known fact, it depends on the course. Isn't that interesting? It's not like always 100 laps. Sometimes it's 46 or 72, right? So, you know, the course changes. So your course is going to be different than someone else. This is your current lap, and this lap counts. You don't need to like it, and maybe it's not fun. You just need to see this lap clearly, even if you don't know how the rest of the race is going to go. Welcome to the Be Your Own Life Coach podcast, where you master your mind and coach your own comeback. You are the hero, you are the guide, and you will learn to architect your life from the inside. I'm your host, Britannia Stowe, joined by my sister and co host, Annika Wilder. Enjoy the show. Hello, friends, and welcome back. It's Britannia, your host. Today, we are talking about how to celebrate, how to keep going when you are in the middle of your race. It's already 2026, it's March of 2026. And maybe you're like me, you're 40 years old and life doesn't look exactly like you planned. This doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. And this doesn't mean you quit and give up because maybe you haven't reached your destination. It means you keep going because if you quit, you'll never get there, right? So today we're going to talk about how to understand what to do when you're in the middle of the race. The middle is the hardest part. In the beginning of life, of an adventure, of a business, there's all this anxious energy and that help fuels you and you're able to lift off like a rocket. You're able to take off. And when you're close to the finish line, you're able to sprint because you can see it. You can finally see it. But when you're in the middle, like when you're running a marathon and you're on mile like 18 out of 26.2, you want to quit. Believe me, I've been there. I remember actually training for a race with my dad and looking for every excuse why I did not want to finish the race, why I didn't want to actually do the race or finish training. And then when we were actually in the marathon at mile 18, I hit the wall. And all I could do was fantasize ending it. Not just, saying I'm done, but having some dramatic exit, like pretending to fall and saying, I can't run anymore. I know that the middle is hard. But just like running a marathon, you keep going even when it sucks, even when you can't see the finish line, even if you think you have nothing left in the tank. You keep going. And maybe for mile 18 and 19 and 20 and 21 and 22, you still feel that way. An entire hour can go by when you're running a marathon and life just sucks. But then something happens when you get to mile 23 or 24 and you can finally see, oh my gosh, I might finish this. Life is just like that. So maybe you're in your mile 18, 19, or 20 and you're feeling unmotivated. Or worse, you're comparing yourself to other people along their journey. It's normal. It's normal to compare yourself, especially at these big age-based milestones. So I just turned 40. And so, of course, I'm like, oh, what did I expect my life to look at when I turned 40? You're looking at your career, your family, your money, maybe even creative projects. And maybe you didn't go through a major birthday. Maybe you're 32 but your friend just got engaged and you're not even in a relationship, or your brother just started a business and you're still stuck in your 9 to 5. And you look and you go, oh my gosh, like what am I doing wrong? And we start to compare ourselves and we defeat ourselves. You might start to think, gosh, my life doesn't look like that. But remember, you are on your own timetable. Even if your friends and your family were all the exact same age, they still wouldn't be doing things exactly the way you're doing them or at the time or rate that you're doing them. Some things might be going according to plan. Like, for me, I'm married and I have a baby, and that's exactly where I expected to be at 40. Maybe I expected to be done having babies at 40, but I have a baby, and that's great. But my book is not complete, and I don't have as much money in the bank as I would like to have. Maybe you expected to have financial freedom by this time in your life. It's so easy to look around you and start comparing to others what you don't have. But if it's easy to compare yourself and see what you don't have, then it's just as easy to notice what you do have. You do have a job that pays your bills. You have a roof over your head. You have food that you can eat. You have a support system. And when it comes to creative projects, yeah, maybe your book isn't written or your movie isn't made or you haven't launched your, you know, art business, but you are further along than you've ever been. In so many ways, I am further than I've ever been in my life. I mean, I'm 40. You would think I've come pretty far. But, look at your life and start to realize that you have come such a long way, but you're not done. And that's where this gets tough, right? Because you're like, but I haven't reached my goal. And if I stop and validate, how far I've come, maybe I won't keep going. The progress is real, but the patience is hard. And holding these two truths at the same time is difficult because, again, the middle is the hardest place to be. Being mid-journey is uniquely uncomfortable. You're no longer who you were, but you're not yet who you want to be. And this is where this impatient and this discomfort lives. You see the vision, but you also see the gap. And you might even see the distance or the time or the work it'll take to get there. You're in these two identities, right? You're in your old self, which is familiar and safe and proven. And then you're also in your new self, which is uncertain and is demanding a lot more energy and a lot more growth. And this can feel so intense and so confusing. You're emotionally living two timelines at once. No wonder you feel like your insides are being torn from the inside. You're not confused, though. You're just transitioning. You're not the same person, you were 10 or even 20 years ago. Your standards of living and of life and of yourself have changed. You're you're starting to compare yourself to all these new goals and ambitions. But look back to when you were 18, right? When you were 18, all you wanted to do was move out of your parents' house. You just wanted a place of your own. You didn't care if it was in the bad part of town or if it was a studio or if it had gross carpet in the bathroom, which my first place totally did. I don't know why people put carpet in the bathroom. And you just want a job. You just want a way to make money. You don't care what it was. And my first like full-time job was working at Walgreens. I just wanted to make money. I just wanted a place to live. And if I looked at my life, from an 18-year-old's perspective today, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I am killing it. I have a job. I have a partner. I have dogs. I have a baby. I have a place to live. But you're not 18 anymore. I'm definitely not 18. Thank goodness. Do not want to live that time of my life again. But so your goals, your expectations of life, and your standards of living have changed. So why do we struggle so much to celebrate how far we have come? Well, we confuse celebration with complacency. We think if I acknowledge how far I've come, maybe I'll stop and I'll lose momentum and I'll just party and I'll have a pool party and I'll just celebrate all day long because look how far I've come and I'm so awesome and maybe I won't go any further. You've also been trained to not celebrate, progress. You celebrate outcomes, right? Your finish lines, your launches, your titles, your numbers. So you haven't been taught to celebrate in the thick of it when you're in progress, when you're in the middle of the run versus at the end of the race. We minimize progress because it feels slow. Incremental growth doesn't look impressive. It just doesn't. And other people can't see it. And sometimes you can't feel it. And often you don't have anything, tangible. Maybe you're in the middle of school and you're working hard to get your degree, but you don't have the degree yet. And so you feel like I can't celebrate. I don't have my bachelor's or my master's or my doctorate yet. I can't celebrate because I don't have a house. I just have an apartment. Or I only have 1 0 or 2 zeros in my bank account instead of four or five. It's harder to celebrate that progress because it's hard to see, at least from the outside perspective. And we have this idea that we're going to jinx ourselves somehow. Like, if I acknowledge what I do have, maybe it'll disappear. Or again, we'll stop. If you take your eyes off the road, you might feel like you're going to veer off course. And that comparison trap, the comparison distortion, we start measuring our behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. Even if you're not looking at social media, just in conversations with friends and family, you're not going to have the play-by-play of every struggle and every doubt. Not with most friends. Maybe with a couple of best friends or sisters, you're able to have those conversations. But in general, you're not hearing about the sleepless nights and the struggles and the questions and where the money's going to come from or what you're going to do next. So you think you can't celebrate because it's hard to acknowledge that discomfort and that you're not where you want to be. And if you don't celebrate until the end, you're going to spend most of your time, most of your life feeling behind. This has been such a big theme in my life. And that's why I'm doing this episode, is because this is something I struggle with. That's why I do all my episodes, quite honestly. The things that I talk about are the things that I need to hear, right? So, I constantly feel like I'm behind. Even at the age of, 18, 19, I was like, I don't have my life figured out. 16, I think was the first time I recognized, started having those thoughts. At 16 years old, I felt so behind because I didn't have it all sorted out. That was over 20 years ago. And what has changed? I still feel behind. And I feel behind because I'm not allowing myself to celebrate each move and each progress. And maybe you don't have to celebrate every little thing. Like you started a business and you go, I picked out the name, woohoo. And I built out an email, woohoo. And I picked out logos, woohoo. Though I think that's great. Maybe it's, celebrating every three moves, but allowing yourself to celebrate. You are still running. This is a race. I mentioned the marathon before. Life is not a sprint. It is long. It evolves. And knowing that it's a marathon doesn't make it easier. You're like, yeah, I've heard that before. But it's true. There are straightaways and there are curves, there are uphill sections, and there are slower laps. There are times that you are able to speed up and times that you can slow down, but you don't quit. Just the pace changes a little bit. Maybe you stop at a water station to get some water. That doesn't mean that you're not continuing forward. It doesn't mean that you've given up on the race. Progress isn't always about speed. Remember the parable of the tortoise and the hare? Slow and steady wins the race. The fact that you're still in the race, that you have your shoes on, tied tight, and you're ready to go, that is worth celebrating. It's not about how fast you are moving. My husband and I have gotten into Formula One over the last couple of years. It's been fun to watch and to learn about Formula One. And in Formula One, there are pit stops. So pit stops are these, planned or sometimes unplanned, but these stops that are necessary and strategic. The driver goes into the pit stop and to change tires if the weather has changed or worn out, maybe refuel, maybe there's a technical problem, maybe even adjusting strategy. A pit stop, though, does not mean the race is over. In fact, every driver has to take a pit stop, at least to change tires once, sometimes multiple times. And even though your car is stopped, you are still in the race. It just means that you're preparing for the next leg. And timing is everything. You may be going along and your tires are good, and you notice that the Red Bull car goes into the pit lane and they're going box, 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 and they go and they box and they get tires. And you're like, my tires are good. Do I need a box? No, trust your vision, trust your timing. And then box when you're ready. Allow yourself to have a different schedule, and that will allow you to eventually win the race. In life, you have to have these pit stops too. It looks like rest or reflection, pausing to reassess goals, adjusting timelines, or even pivoting strategy. See, growth takes maintenance, not just movement. Sometimes we think we're not moving forward because we're not putting miles behind us. We think we're not going anywhere. But even if you're on a cross country trip and you stop to go to a cafe and get coffee and get breakfast, or maybe refuel your car, you're still on your way. You don't call your family and be like, guess I'm not coming. I stopped for gas. I'm having a piece of pie. The race is over. I'm definitely not coming home now. Right? That's ridiculous. It's a part of the journey. And sometimes I would say on my cross country trips that the pit stops are the most fun, right? So, how do we take a healthy pit stop without losing momentum? Well, here's your pit stop check in. First, assess what is working, what is not, what is fueling me, what is draining me, and then adjust. What needs to change pace, but not direction? Where do you need to maybe bring in some mentors or support? Maybe it is actually direction. Acknowledge at least three ways that you have grown. And let this be a celebration, whether it's handling a tight turn or overcoming unexpected obstacles. Recharge. Rest your body, rest your mind, rest your nervous system, and breathe. Maybe move your body, even if it's not moving your business or moving your financial number forward. Allow yourself to do whatever it takes to recharge for you. Refocus and ask yourself, what is one next lap, one small move? I'm not going to the finish line, not today. It's not going to be finished today. But what is one small thing that I can do that will keep me moving forward? Formula One races are won one lap at a time, and so is your life. We're so busy trying to be productive and trying to measure success by all these things that we have. Maybe you need to reframe your productivity. It isn't necessarily about pushing harder, not sleeping for days at a time. You need to move smarter. And if you speed up, make sure it's strategic, speeding up as you exit a turn instead of enter a turn. And you allow yourself to stay the course when you're in the middle. I know. I know that it's so hard living two versions of yourself. I feel like I'm constantly living multiple versions of myself. You're in this middle of an identity split. Your old, self wants certainty, wants safety, wants complacency, and your new self is striving but also needs patience. And so you feel restless and you feel tired. You feel motivated and yet you feel discouraged. And you can feel these contradicting feelings at the same time. The discomfort, though, that you're feeling in these contradicting feelings is evidence of growth. You're not stuck, you're stretching. And the tension you feel is the space where transformation happens. Constantly pushing towards your edge, seeking that discomfort and how you actually create change in your life. So, to help you along the way, let's redefine success. Success in the middle of the race, not at the end, not at the beginning. Maybe that looks like consistency, self-trust, showing up again and again, even when it's hard, because I'm telling you, it's going to be hard. Staying in motion, even when it's slow. Becoming someone who doesn't quit on themselves. It's not about anybody else. It's about yourself. Don't quit on you. And what if you measured success by resilience instead of results? And what if patience was a skill you're learning and not a flaw that you lack? I recently saw this quote, and I'm paraphrasing here, that if you pray to God and you ask for patience, He doesn't arrive at your door with a basket of patience. He doesn't just give it to you. He will put obstacles in your life and along the road to help you build patience. That is what we're doing here. And I know it would be so nice if someone could just hand it to you. I know. But in the end, that would be far less satisfying. In today's Coach Yourself segment, we have our little pit stop check in. So let's start with acknowledging where you are. Ask yourself, where am I at in life right now? Not where I want to be, not where I thought I'd be, not where I am in comparison to anyone else, but where am I right now? Where am I actually? And just acknowledge and say, this is my current lap. That's what this is. It's just a lap. How many laps are in a Formula One race? Well, little known fact, it depends on the course. Isn't that interesting? It's not like always 100 laps. Sometimes it's 46 or 72, right? So, you know, the course changes. So your course is going to be different than someone else. This is your current lap, and this lap counts. You don't need to like it, and maybe it's not fun. You just need to see this lap clearly, even if you don't know how the rest of the race is going to go. And name how far you've come. Ask yourself, what am I doing now that I wasn't doing a year ago? I'm doing a podcast, or maybe I'm journaling, or I'm exercising, or I'm saving a little bit. Call it out. Where have I learned that the past me didn't know? I love that one. I feel like I have learned so much. I'm still in the thick of it, but I'm learning so much. And Britannia from 2 years ago has less knowledge than Britannia of today. Ask yourself, where do I handle things with more grace, confidence, and courage? And remind yourself, I am further than I have ever been, even if I'm not finished. I am further than I have ever been. And this is not settling, this is recognizing the distance that you've traveled. Release the pressure to be finished. You'll be finished when you're finished. Okay. Remind yourself, I don't need to arrive today to be on track, to be on course. I'm not late. I'm not failing. I'm in the middle of a process. I am becoming. And the process you've never done before as this version of yourself before, not this stage of life, not with these new standards or parameters. And if impatience shows up, don't fight it. Just acknowledge it. Reassure it. No, we do have patience. We're going to keep going. I see you, and we're still moving forward. Adjust, but don't abandon. Pivot, but don't quit. Ask yourself what needs adjusting, not quitting. Is this a pace issue or a purpose issue? Do I need rest, clarity, or do I need support for the next lap? Encourage yourself by saying, I am allowed to pivot without losing momentum. Pit stops are not pauses from growth. They're actually a part of it. They allow you to keep moving, right? When you take those stops on those long journeys to get your blueberry muffin or your apple pie, or can you tell I'm hungry? Or you fill up your tank of gas. You haven't stopped. It is literally a part of the journey. And maybe even when you're taking a cross-country road trip, you have those planned. Like you're going to stop every 5 hours, or you're going to stop every 200 miles, whatever it may be. Be gentle. Be gentle with yourself. So ask yourself, what is one thing that I can focus on next? Not the whole race, but just the next turn. And ask yourself, where can I give myself more confidence? Saying, I trust myself to keep going one lap at a time. And you know me, I love some affirmations, right? So here's an affirmation that you can use, or you can write your own. I honor the distance I have traveled. I allow myself to rest without guilt. I release the pressure to be finished. I stay in the race, patient and present. Listen, friends, you're not late. I know it feels that way. I always think of the little white rabbit in Alice in Wonderland. I'm late for a very important date. No time to say hello, goodbye. I'm late, I'm late, I'm late. I'm always thinking that. But you're not late. You're allowed to also celebrate. You can celebrate well without stopping. You know, there's some people when you're running, races, 5Ks, 10Ks, whatever, and they stop and grab water, but they don't actually stop. They run and they grab the water, they throw it back, they throw the cup, and they keep going. Maybe that is your version of a pit stop, okay? But you need that. I do encourage, though, that you pause without quitting. Maybe that's to tie your shoe. Maybe it's actually to drink all of the water. Maybe you have to use the bathroom. Okay. We know you have to use the bathroom when you have a long race. You're not behind. You're not done. You're mid race. Honor the distance that you've traveled, honor the pit stop, and honor the next lap by taking that pit stop. Stay in the race, friends. If you quit, you will never get there. But you're not quitting. You're trusting the timing. And remember, you don't have to be finished to be proud of yourself. This has been another episode of the Be Your Own Life Coach podcast. If you found value in today's conversation, subscribe and share the love. And remember the teachings of Lao Tzu. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. Until next time, trust yourself. Take the wisdom, take the breath, and take the next step.